I grew up in a small city in Iran, and I always wanted to be a scientist since I was very small. But in my wildest dreams, I never thought I'm going to become a parasitologist, obviously. I don't think many people do.
So what is it about parasitology that is so interesting to you?
So that's, again, the other thing. It pushes the boundaries and puts you really, really into your uncomfortable zone. You know, when we think about parasites, everyone just even decide not to mention it. That's how bad it is talking about parasites, let alone talking about parasitology. Parasites are controlling the planet the way we see. We have more parasitic species than we have free living like us, but we don't see them. Firstly, because most of them are small and microscopic, and even if they are big, usually they are inside our bodies or the body of the animals or plants and stuff like that. So they are hard to be seen. And as a human being, when we don't see, we don't care and we forget about them. However, the way they control our behavior, even the way we interact with each other, the way we interact with, like if it's an animal, the way they interact with their predators or everything else, just all comes to the parasites they have. And just understanding that and exploring their life is quite interesting.
Quite. Well, it's an interesting interest, I've got to say. It's not something I would have actually imagined dedicating my life to. But there is something about the nature of parasites and the power of parasites to change and affect our food chain and ultimately food production that fascinates you. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the word parasite basically means people who get food from others without their permission. And then scientists use this term to refer to organisms on the planet that use other organisms for food and for reproduction. To complete their life cycle, they need to go through a journey from one animal to another, or from animals to humans, or from plants to humans. And that's how we come to their life cycle. And they found their way to us. Whether they choose it or not, I don't know, but they come. And these days, especially with, like technology shows like MasterChef and a lot of other things, immigration, travel, tourism, there is a big appetite in human population to eat all these different types of foods. Like when we were growing up, there was a specific food we always eat over and over again. But now everyone, doesn't matter poor or rich, we all try different foods that we never had before.
So, but what have parasites got to do with that, the diversity of food that we eat now?
Because parasites are always inside animals that we eat.
So we're consuming a lot more parasites than we ever have before.
Potentially. So if you know about parasites, obviously you have food chain supply and food safety regulations that control these parasites and put them aside. So when you go to the supermarket and buy a food, you don't have to think about it. And we don't think about it. Like if you go and buy a red meat, if you go buy vegetable or you buy chicken from the supermarket these days, you're sure it's 100% safe. And there are basic things without even thinking you do, like you cook properly your food or you wash vegetable and stuff. And that basically is enough. But then with the exotic food, an exotic way of cooking, for example, let's say consuming sushi, that is completely raw fish, or other foods that red meat or other food items do not cooked properly, then you basically raise the risk of getting infected.
So are we at a point in Australia's history, or food development, I should say, where we are at risk of being inundated by a number of parasites that we're not catering for?
Yes, absolutely. Our risk doesn't come necessarily by exotic food and stuff. It is a multifactorial situation that we are in Australia. So in one way, we have all these exotic dishes and appetite to try new things. In other hand, we have climate change. So this interaction between parasites and hosts completely changed. And then on the other hand, we are dealing with lack of expertise. So when you put all this together, in Australia, we have much risk of people getting infected by parasites, our farming industries getting impacted by parasites, and by a lot of exotic parasites finding their way to Australia. And I believe in many situations it's already late, but we still can start today and be proactive about other parasites that haven't found their way to Australia yet.
Back in the 50s and 60s, Australia was a world leader, I understand,
Absolutely.
in parasitology and set the global standard, and we've lost that edge. So what's your vision for revitalising Australia's expertise in this field?
It's very interesting because it surprises me. Such a developed country with, like best scientists, really cutting edge facilities to do research about everything else like bacteria, viruses, or non-infectious agents. But when it comes to parasites, we sometimes even are worse than developing countries. And that's how complacent Australia became when it comes to parasites. And I hope that our policymakers, our decision makers, wake up and do investment into capacity building, in training more parasitologists in all discipline of parasitology, because there is no one parasitologist that can work on all parasites. But then I was really, really lucky because CSU is, in my opinion, the best place in Australia to study our ecosystem, to study our environment, and especially studying parasites, which is a big part of this. CSU campuses are located across Murray-Darling Basin, which is known as the nation's food bowl. And parasites, as we know, just go between plants, animals, and humans. So there is no better place in the country than CSU to work on that. And then later on, by staying at CSU longer, I learned that we are in Wiradjuri country, and which is known as a country of three rivers. So people, Wiradjuri people who live in this country, and I'm still learning about them. I'm not saying I know anything, but what I know about them is they know themselves as custodians of these lands. They believe they don't own these lands, but they are responsible to look after its health. So it comes really to the heart of the research I like to do.
What would you say, just lastly, to young people considering going to CSU for studies in your area, and even considering parasitology? What would you say to them? How would you encourage them?
It's really easy to hook people in parasitology. When students come to the CSU, and I have to say we are very lucky. Most of our students have already this connection with land, and they come from big cities, which is quite interesting, that they even didn't grow up in farms or in, like big environment, but they choose to come CSU because they want to have this first-hand connection with the environment and with the land. And then it's just so easy. They already have the love. And if you have the love to explore, it's just easy to do anything like biology or anything else that CSU offers.